I saw a man in a parked car deleting the same message 10 times, and when he closed his eyes, I saw every man who ever gave his whole heart to someone who never truly saw him. That moment hit me harder than anything he could have said out loud. Because you could feel it. That deep, heavy realization a man tries to hide behind steady breathing and a straight face. The kind that slips through anyway. The kind that exposes the truth he's been running from. He wasn't heartbroken in the dramatic movie sense. He wasn't angry, shouting, or punching the steering wheel. No. It was quieter, sadder, more real. He was mourning the version of himself that tried so hard. Mourning the parts of his heart he kept giving away even when nothing came back. He stared at that unsent message like it was the last thread tying him to a story he already knew was over. And watching him, I realized something most men never say out loud. This is what breaking looks like for us. Not chaos. Not noise. Silence. A silence that weighs more than the love we lost. And the truth is, I knew men like him. Men who sit in their cars for an extra 10 minutes because they don't want anyone to see the disappointment on their faces. Men who replay conversations just to understand where things shifted. Men who love with both hands and walk away with nothing left in them. And when I saw him, I saw you. The way you've been carrying pain you don't talk about. The way you've been trying to stay strong even when your heart feels heavy. The way you've been pretending you're fine because you don't want to burden anybody with the truth. But here's what hit me in that moment. That man wasn't weak. He was becoming stronger. Stronger because he finally faced the truth he was afraid to say. Stronger because he recognized he couldn't keep giving to someone who only took. Stronger because the silence wasn't a collapse. It was a turning point. That's what people don't understand about men. We don't break loudly. We break inward. We break privately. We break in the spaces where no one sees us. But the moment we accept the truth, the real truth, everything changes. The pressure drops. The confusion fades. The denial dies. And what rises in its place is clarity. A new clarity that says, I can't keep bleeding for someone who doesn't even notice I'm bleeding. That man in the car wasn't losing someone. He was finding himself again. And whether you realize it yet or not, that's exactly what's happening to you. You gave more than affection. You gave your steady self. You were the one who arrived early, stayed late, and kept promises no one else kept. Quiet dependability became your signature. People learned to expect your presence the way they expect sunlight in the morning. It stopped being special and started being certain. You started measuring worth by how much you could carry. Loving her became a role you played, not a choice you made. You learned to bend without breaking until you didn't notice where bending ended and losing began. Your kindness became their baseline. They treated your generosity like a service they subscribed to. You fixed things, smoothed storms, carried burdens, and called it love. But something subtle happened. The care you offered became a rule in the relationship rather than a gift. They stopped seeing the labor behind your calm. They forgot that steadiness is effort, not entitlement. You cleaned up messes they created and then wondered why the same mess returned. You forgave to keep the peace and the peace took your shape until you fit only around it. You confused patience with permission. You mistook absence of conflict for emotional health. You believed that giving without complaint would lead to gratitude, and that forgiveness would teach better behavior. Instead, it trained avoidance and dependence. When you always stepped up, they stopped learning how to stand. When you always lowered your needs, there's rows to fill the space you left. You became the background to their drama, the invisible scaffolding beneath their excuses. There is a price to being the one who holds. It accumulates quietly. It doesn't show up as fireworks. It piles like invisible debt. One morning your energy balance reads negative and you are surprised. The repeated withdrawals leave a balance of exhaustion. You don't collapse in a single spectacular scene. The collapse is a sequence of small absences that finally add up to something you can't ignore. That's where identity shifts. You stop defining yourself by the work you do for someone else. You start remembering your own rhythms and preferences. The edges of your life unclench. You stop explaining every mood away. You stop neutralizing every trigger. You relearn that a boundary is not a punishment but a map back to yourself. This change looks modest to the world, but it is seismic inside. Giving less does not equal caring less. It means directing some of the same energy you spent on others back toward your own life. It means investing in your peace with the same consistency that used to be reserved for them. You didn't become selfish, you became selective. You stopped donating your calm as if it were disposable. Hold steady. Protect your worth. Become the man your future respects and never apologizes for today. Silence isn't just absence, it's a tool that rewrites the rules. When you step back, you aren't hiding, you're recalibrating. You stop filling the gaps she leaves and watch how the gaps begin to show shape. That empty space becomes a mirror, and mirrors are unforgiving. They reflect what she ignored when you were busy making everything okay. She notices the quiet and instinctively searches for noise to explain it. The urge to restore the old rhythm is strong because chaos had become comfortable. Detachment isn't emotional deadness. It's a precise refusal to repair what she refuses to fix. You remove your hands from the steering wheel and let the car find its own lane. At first she treats your distance like a glitch to be solved. She will test stability with small, calculated actions because she wants to see whether the world still bends toward her needs. Those tiny probes are loud in their intent. They ask without words how much of you is still available. Your lack of reaction changes the scoreboard. It rewrites expectations. She learns the rules by watching your limits hold line. That's the education absence teaches, not through lectures but through consequence. The thing she took for granted becomes scarce and suddenly valuable. She discovers that your presence had been a cushion, not a given. The softer you were, the thicker the cushion. When you withdraw it, she discovers how much she leaned on you without noticing. This stage triggers anxiety because humans crave predictability. She used your consistency to anchor identity, and now that anchor drifts. Panic wears a composed face. She masks it with busyness and bravado, but at night questions come up. She will revisit memory like a detective, searching timestamps for the subtle shift that cost her your devotion. Regret doesn't announce itself. It accumulates in quiet moments, in the replay of ordinary kindnesses she dismissed. Testing looks like casual replies, mistimed posts, or accidental texts. Small disruptions designed to measure if the pattern still bends. Don't mistake those moves for reconciliation. They are temperature checks. Your response matters because it determines whether she can keep treating you as elastic. If you respond the way you used to, you tuition into her curriculum of taking without consequence. If you remain steady and limited, she must learn to sit with discomfort. Real change requires consistency from both sides. If she only polishes the surface to reclaim comfort, the pattern will relapse. If she rebuilds, it will be slow and unglamorous. It will be routine actions repeated without fanfare. Your job is not to be the catalyst for growth. Your job is to be the standard she can no longer reshuffle. Hold that standard. Let silence do the teaching it was meant to do. You preserved your dignity, now watch how that quiet reshapes both your future and hers. Nighttime is where the mask falls and the real account balance appears. When the world quiets, the vanity lights and curated feeds stop covering the gaps. She is left alone with the echo of ordinary moments you gave without drama. Those small acts, listening, steady presence, the way you made chaos feel smaller, arrive suddenly in full color. The things she took for granted turn into what she could never replicate. Alone, comparison begins. Not between men but between versions of herself. She remembers being softer, calmer, steadier when you were there. That memory becomes a metric she uses to grade new faces and new promises. The novelty men offer fades fast because novelty cannot carry the deep calm you provided. That calm was a rare currency. It buys patience and forgiveness that shallow energy never does. Regret starts slow and polite. It does not storm in. It settles in corners and grows patient. At first she edits the past to protect her pride. Later she reads old messages not for warmth but as a manual of who she was when someone believed in her. Those messages are weapons and mirrors, sometimes both. She inspects the timestamps, the tone, the moments you steadied her pulse without fanfare. Each discovery tightens the knot of discomfort. Nights become a classroom of reflection. She asks herself why she tolerated a version of herself that relied on you. She confronts habits she hid behind your presence. That confrontation is confusing because it demands honesty and pain at the same time. It invites responsibility, which is heavier than excuses. Attempts to replace you fail because others don't bend to her the way you did. New partners prefer boundaries. New faces are quick to test and quicker to withdraw. They refuse the emotional credit you extended freely. That mismatch exposes the lull between what she expects and what the rest of the world will tolerate. Loneliness is not always empty. It is a pressure that distills truth. In the pressure, she recognizes patterns she used to argue away. She realizes some choices kept her safe in the short term and imprisoned her in the long term. Realization tastes bitter because it arrives with the knowledge that comfort was complicit in the problem. This phase triggers bargaining. She imagines conversations she never had. She rehearses apologies she never wrote. Sometimes she reaches out with soft language and softer promises. Often those attempts are more about reclaiming habit than offering change. Nostalgia is a cheap sedative. It soothes without repairing. If she does return, watch the tempo. Growth shows up in steady, small acts over months. Sudden sweetness without structural change is tactical, not transformational. Your test is consistency. Does her behavior match her words when life pressures return? Protect your regained boundaries. Your silence has taught her something. Don't let immediate warmth erase long lessons. Guard your peace always. Healing doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly, in the moments you don't post, talk about, or even recognize at first. It starts when you stop checking your phone out of habit. It deepens when you make plans that don't revolve around being available. It becomes real when your world stops shrinking around her absence and starts expanding around your presence. You notice your energy shifting. You carry yourself with a little more weight in your step, a little more purpose in your choices. The emotional noise that once kept you up at night slowly dissolves into a steady internal signal. You're no longer reacting. You're directing. You're steering your life instead of letting memory take the wheel. Healing is not linear. Some mornings feel clean and centered. Other mornings hit you with an old ache. But the difference now is you don't collapse under it. You let it pass like weather. You don't cling to storms you already survived. That's the mark of growth. Your ability to feel without falling apart. Your confidence rebuilds in layers. First, you gain clarity about what drained you. Then you realize how much of yourself you gave without boundaries. Later, you understand the cost of trying to carry someone who couldn't carry themselves. These realizations sharpen your values. They teach you what to avoid, what to honor, and what you will never negotiate again. Healing also changes the way you see yourself in relationships. You stop craving validation from someone who couldn't respect your effort. You stop romanticizing chaos. You stop mistaking intensity for connection. What you start craving instead is stability, not the lazy kind, but the kind that comes from two people who respect each other's emotional space. You learn to walk away from anything that threatens your peace, even if you once would have held on until it bled. Your routines become an anchor. You build structure not to distract yourself but to rebuild momentum. The gym becomes a sanctuary. Work feels sharper. Your ambition returns with hunger. You start planning your life again, not waiting for someone to return, but preparing for who you're becoming. The more you heal, the less you desire the past. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer defines the man you're turning into. The attachment fades. The pressure lifts. You become less reactive to old memories and more invested in new goals. That shift is powerful. It's the first sign that you've outgrown the version of yourself who once tolerated things that wounded him. Then comes the real turning point. You stop asking, "Why did she leave?" and start asking, Why did I stay so long? That question frees you. It breaks the last emotional chain. It restores your self-respect. It reminds you that walking away wasn't just survival, it was evolution. And now, with your spirit clean and your focus sharp, you're finally ready for something better than what you lost. When she returns soft and nostalgic, don't let warmth erase the map you drew for your life. That sweetness is often a shortcut back to habit, not a ticket to change. You owe her compassion, yes, but not suspension of the rules that kept you whole. If she offers apologies like patchwork, check the seams. If she offers promises like speeches, watch the actions that follow. Real repair is patient work, not a highlight reel of remorse. This is the moment where you test what you learned. You learn to value consistency over drama. Now apply that lesson to decisions, not feelings. Open the door slowly if at all. Let proximity be earned. If she is willing to rebuild, her behavior will line up with those small, steady acts that make relationships sustainable. If she's only drawn to comfort, the surface will look neat and the underlying patterns will stay the same. Remember that returning doesn't reset the ledger. Past choices have consequences that don't disappear because of longing. You carried losses to get here. Those losses taught you which bridges you cannot cross again. Protect the boundaries you practiced. They were not punishments, they were the scaffold of your recovery. Treat them as non-negotiable unless consistent proof makes them negotiable. Hold conversations with clarity, not with drama. Ask the questions you were afraid to ask before. Demand specifics, not platitudes. Ask how she intends to change and what concrete steps she will take. Listen for timelines that make sense and commitments that can be measured. Beware of vague language wrapped in poetry. Change that can be observed over months is what matters. Watch how she responds under pressure because that is the truest test. Growth that appears only in calm moments rarely survives strain. The real evaluation begins when life complicates. When deadlines hit, health issues surface, or egos clash. If she stays steady, then the case for reunion strengthens. If she reverts, you will have avoided repeating the cycle. Don't confuse occasional softness with transformation. Nostalgia is seductive because it asks you to relive a version of safety. But safety without responsibility is a trap. Your maturity now is to refuse a comfortable ruin in exchange for temporary solace. Prioritize long-term compatibility over short-term relief. Choose the durability of respect over the fireworks of reconciliation. Finally, remember this: mercy without boundaries teaches dependency. Compassion without accountability teaches entitlement. You can be kind and still be uncompromising about your peace. The goal is not to punish her forever. It's to protect your future until she proves she's willing to build one with you, responsibly and consistently. She can, great. She can't, keep walking. Your life is waiting on the other side of that decision. Trust that choosing yourself now creates the life you deserve. One built on mutual respect, steadiness, and honest, lasting partnership, starting now. If you found value in this story, subscribe now. More powerful lessons, deeper insights, and raw truth are coming. Stay sharp, stay growing.